is to look out and make sure that we don't have any kings or queens in this country. But it seems like y'all have decided that it's going to be Mr. King and his queen, and y'all can pick which one is which. But
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just blew the lid off the House Oversight Committee. She's taking on the national debt, the unchecked influence of Elon Musk, and a government she says is actively bypassing our Constitution. Here is the full breakdown of why her blistering critique is going viral right now.
And when I say you guys, I am referring to my Republican colleagues. Pretend as if you are the heroes of the story, but let me remind you who set the House on fire. It was y'all. So let me go ahead and handle these receipts, because I know that I always have to have proof, even though I guess our education system is failing us, because it seems like facts don't seem to faze people that vote for y'all. But I'm going to do it anyway. So when we talk about debt, I'd ask for unanimous consent to enter into a record this article that says Donald Trump built a national debt so big, even before the pandemic, that it'll weigh down the economy for years.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you so much. In fact, it talked about the fact that he ran up our debt almost $8 trillion. It was estimated to be $7.8 trillion at that time. And this is it's actually the third biggest increase ever under any presidential administration. So I don't understand how y'all gonna play the heroes. I also want to just kind of be clear about some basic level setting of civics, because it seems like civics is evading us. And listen, Governor, I actually appreciate you. I know that in today's times, for whatever reason, if you got a D or an R in front of your name, it has to be all hostile. Listen, I am a former business owner. If I was not sitting in this seat, I would still have my law firm, but you know, we have rules, right? So I'm not allowed to practice law. I'm not allowed to do a lot of other things, because ethics decides that that's not really a good thing, to make sure that the American people can trust that I don't have any divided interest. In fact, we do that for people that run our treasury typically. So I'm curious to know if you have an elected treasurer in your state. And you do, actually.
We do.
I know you do, because I looked him up. And I'm curious to know. So it's my guess that he's the one that actually controls all of the treasury systems that you have, correct?
Some of the investments.
He controls some of the investments, but also monies that need to be disseminated by the state, that's done by him, correct?
Department of Management and the Treasurer's Office.
Okay, in the Treasurer's Office.
Two separate agencies.
Okay, but you have an agency that does that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and as you are having this agency do that, these are people that have some sort of ethics that they have to follow, I'm sure. I'm going out on a limb because I don't know how anything works in Iowa. I'm just being honest with you.
Yes.
Okay. Here is the deal. I want the American people to understand that Democrats are not against efficiency. In fact, the last time that this country actually ran to the extent that there was a balanced budget and actually there was a surplus, it was a Democrat in the White House. His name was President Clinton. So we are not against this. What we are against is this idea that we will evade the Constitution, or we will evade our own constitutional. In fact, it's not even an invasion. At this point, it feels as if y'all have just decided that y'all are going to castrate your constitutional duty and hand it over to someone who is unelected. It doesn't matter how many cheerleaders he had on the field campaigning for him. That doesn't mean that he gets to go in and sit atop any of our agencies. And the fact that we had a vote today and we asked to bring him in because we have a constitutional duty, we all took our oath, and maybe some of y'all just don't take it seriously. But I take it seriously when I take an oath to do a job, and my job is to look out and make sure that we don't have any kings or queens in this country. But it seems like y'all have decided that it's going to be Mr. King and his queen, and y'all can pick which one is which. But either way, I want to also talk about, Governor, I'm curious to know if you know the answers to these questions. Which party controls the White House?
Republican.
Which party controls the Senate?
Republican.
Which party controls the House?
Republican.
Is that about what the makeup is in Iowa?
Yes.
And that has allowed you to be able to get your agenda across, correct?
Yes.
And you haven't had to bring in somebody to basically usurp any types of norms because you worked through the process, correct?
Well, I did executive orders,
Yes or no?
2080
Yes or no?
agreements, and then
Yes-
went to
yes
the
or no? Because
legislature
we've
as
only
well.
got
It wasn't all of the
I'm
above.
gonna reclaim my time because I
All of
only
the
got so
above.
much time left.
All of the
I
above.
also want to point out that you specifically talked about that you recently had 3 national declarations for disasters, and I want to enter into the record a unanimous consent. Trump moves to abolish FEMA, shift disaster response to states.
Without objection.
And my
so ordered.
final unanimous consent I'd ask says that Mike Johnson's budget plan is at risk of collapse, even though we know that y'all control all 3 levers of government. So if this is what y'all want to do, then go ahead and clean it up and fix it and just go through the process. And honestly, there's nothing that
Order.
we will be able to say about it.
Order.
And with that, I will yield.
Now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Talcove, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up where you left off really quickly. Just to be clear, the upgrades that you're talking about as it relates to our data processes, these aren't things that would be free, are they? They would cost some kind of money. Not looking for a number, but they will cost, correct?
Some are free and some would cost money.
Okay. All right. So I just want to leave it there because we've had a number of these hearings. So I do want to be clear, before the Trump administration came in, this committee did exist in the form of the Oversight Committee, and our task is to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. In that vein, we had a number of hearings, at least last term. I can't speak for any other term as I'm only in my sophomore term, and we dealt with improper payments. And interestingly enough, our chairwoman, who is so passionate about this today, she missed every single one of those improper payment hearings. But just to be clear, I was there, so I don't want anyone to believe that Democrats just come to work and don't plan to do work. In fact, I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that the Republicans believe our job is, because right now they have relinquished their constitutional duties over to an unelected bureaucrat, someone who no one went out to vote for. And absolutely, he is occupying the Oval Office, as we saw yesterday. And that is a first for me, to see someone occupying the Oval Office who's never actually been elected to the Oval Office and actually answering more questions than the person that allegedly got elected. But for whatever reason, this is the first time we're having a DOGE subcommittee hearing, and that guy's not here. Instead, we have y'all. So I do want to thank you for coming. But I will say this. It's also interesting to me that in the first few days of DOGE existing, we know that they are trying to get rid of the Department of Education, USAID, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're laying off FAA workers. They are going after the FDA, the CDC, the HHS, the FBI agents, and they're talking about getting rid of FEMA. And they brought y'all in. And I am going to say that I actually was shocked that there was only one person that seemed like he was an overt Trumper as you laid out your opening remarks, because I anticipated that at least one of y'all would say, yes, what Elon is doing is exactly what we would prescribe. But instead, I will applaud you because you actually were focused. You talked about what the American people are looking for us to do. We've actually consistently on this side of the aisle promoted this idea of making investments into technology so that we can do things such as, say, look at the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense that takes up approximately, 50% of our discretionary income, or our discretionary spending. Approximately 50% goes to Department of Defense. Department of Defense has not been able to pass an audit in the last 6 audits, and we're not talking about pennies. I understand that we want everything to be perfect, and if we could get all waste, fraud, and abuse out, that would be fantastic. But let me talk about the big numbers. The big numbers are on that side. When we look at, say, our entire workforce, our federal workforce, as we're trying to somehow fire all of them, they don't even make up a total of 5%. It's even less than that when we look at our budget. But let's talk about defense. That just happens to be the same side of the ledger that Mr. Musk gets the vast majority of his money from. In fact, at the same time that they were unlawfully, and we will stay in court, because on this side, we believe in law and order. We believe in, a number of us are actually lawyers, but nevertheless, we understand the Constitution. We believe in that as well. And so there's things such as, impoundment, right? Because as Mr. Whitson said, he said, we need to return the power of the purse to Congress. It never left. According to the Constitution, that's where it's at. Now, I know that people are confused right now because for whatever reason, we had a guy that went in, and you talk about people invading our data. Listen, people said that they were upset about TikTok, but I'm upset about the guy that runs Twitter, who for sure is doing nefarious things, because I don't understand, if you are trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is, I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying, and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The
We were
gentlelady's
duly elected,
time has
and it
expired.
is time for
The
us to do
gentlelady's
our
time has
job
expired.
and rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as Elon
time
Musk.
has expired. I now
The
recognize.
House Oversight Committee is supposed to be the venue for accountability, but Representative Jasmine Crockett turned it into a battleground for the future of our federal government. She didn't just challenge a policy. She dismantled the entire narrative that the current GOP leadership is running a serious, fiscally responsible ship. Crockett went straight for the jugular on the issue of the national debt. She exposed what she called blatant fiscal hypocrisy, forcing her colleagues to look at the numbers from the Trump administration. Her argument was simple. You cannot claim to be the party of fiscal sanity while overseeing one of the largest debt spikes in modern history. She framed the current rhetoric as a political shell game designed to distract from the reality of the nation's balance sheet while the American people are left to foot the bill. But the most intense moment of the hearing came when the conversation shifted to the shadow influence of Elon Musk. Crockett questioned exactly why a private tech billionaire is being handed the keys to our federal systems. This wasn't just about an outside consultant, it was about a fundamental power shift. She warned that when you allow unelected individuals to bypass Congress and reorganize government agencies, you are eroding the very foundations of our democratic process. She made it clear, efficiency is one thing, but handing government control to private interests without oversight is a dangerous precedent that Congress is failing to check. Finally, she turned her sights on FEMA and the real-world risks of this radical restructuring. Crockett raised alarms about whether this push to overhaul government agencies is actually sabotaging our ability to respond to disasters. If you hollow out the experts and hand over the infrastructure to people with no accountability to the voters, who is responsible when the next hurricane or crisis hits? She argued that this isn't just bureaucratic red tape, it's a potential failure of duty that threatens the safety of every American. Crockett's performance was a line in the sand. She is challenging the committee to decide if they are actually providing oversight or if they are simply acting as a rubber stamp for a new, unelected power structure. Whether you see this as partisan friction or a genuine defense of the Constitution, one thing is certain. She has forced a conversation that the committee wanted to avoid. So, what do you think? Is Jasmine Crockett blowing the whistle on a dangerous trend, or is this just standard political theater? Let me know your take in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives on the power shifts happening in Washington.